The day before Thanksgiving in 1971, a man identifying himself as Dan Cooper bought a plane ticket from Portland to Seattle. He hijacked the plane, claiming he had a bomb in his briefcase and demanded $200,000 and 4 parachutes. He jumped out of the plane with the money and the bomb somewhere over the Pacific Northwest, never to be seen again. The FBI claims to have investigated over 1,000 people, including dozens of deathbed confessions. In 2016, 45 years after the hijacking, the FBI suspended its investigation of the case. While the FBI is no longer looking for DB Cooper, there is a community of people who are trying to solve the case on their own. Welcome to the Cooper Vortex. In this episode, we're lucky to be joined by a psychic medium and animal communicator, author of the Dogs Dish Cookbook for Dogs, entrepreneur, real estate investor, traveling cat nanny, adventurer, and visionary. She is currently researching her father's legacy to turn his story into a film, and that work has led her to question if her father, the French mercenary, is in fact DB Cooper. Enjoyed this episode with my good friend, Sophie Daniele. Alright, Sophie, when was the first time you heard about DB Cooper?
The first time I heard about DB Cooper was probably when I was a little girl. I remember it on the TV, but it was just briefly, and I was about 7 years old at the time. And then I really didn't think anything of it until I was older and going through my divorce, and I was hanging out in Georgia with my adopted Southern grandmother. And she brought up randomly while we were just hanging out at the house, oh, by the way, your father was DB Cooper. And I just looked at her like, where did this come from? So,
and
yeah.
How much did you even know about DB Cooper when she said that?
Not that much, honestly. I just knew it was a man that had jumped out of an airplane with money. That's basically it. And then I just went on with my little life, not thinking much of it. But it was intriguing when she finally mentioned that, because it started some wheels going off in my brain. And I did ask her a few questions, and then we kind of just left it at that. And I really wish at the time now, looking back, because she's passed since then, that I would have asked her a lot more questions. But she always came up with some really interesting information. She used to be a school teacher. And I didn't doubt what she was saying. I just wish I had questioned her.
And what year was this that she told you this?
Oh, gosh. I think it was around, it was 2013. It was fall of 2013. Yeah, and I was in Brinson, Georgia.
And so did you start looking into this? First of all, what made her think that your father was Cooper?
Okay, that's a great question, and I have some answers for that. She said, I know what DB Cooper stands for. And I'm like, well, okay, what does it stand for? And first of all, I did not know at the time that DB was actually a mistake by a newscaster, right? So she thought the DB stood for either his wife's name, Deborah, and the last name, which I'm not sure if I want to say it right now, but I might in a minute. Just give me time to, consider that. And then she said, well, also she mentioned some things that, how he was late to Thanksgiving, and there was just a few things that she started saying. She goes, I have no doubt, and I know because I was there. And I really didn't question it. I just said, okay. And then we went on talking about other things. So it was very random.
Where was your dad living in 1971?
We were living actually in Ohio. So we were there because of the fact that my adopted Southern mother was married to my father, and her parents that she was close to from Georgia were living in Ohio because of her father's job. So, in the South, a girl likes to stay close to her mother, and so wherever they go, she wants to live there too. This happens. It's just the way it is. And so we were all living in that area, and we were actually living with my grandmother and my grandfather in their house in Granville, Ohio.
Do you know what he was doing for work at that time?
My father?
Yeah.
And so yes, he was a professional mercenary.
A professional mercenary?
That's right.
Okay. That's a wild job to have.
Yes. I grew up my entire life with my father being a professional soldier.
For
Well, that's a very good question. First, he started out with the French military, and then he went to the American military. And there's a whole, I don't know where we should start with this, honestly. But then from that, he was also working for the CIA. So sometimes throughout my childhood, he was wearing a military uniform, and I thought, oh, my daddy is a soldier. Okay, no big deal. And we also would live on some military bases. And then there were other times where he was wearing a suit and tie and sunglasses and an attaché case, and he would disappear for, weeks at a time for his work.
When did you find out about this? Because as a child, it's not like that's a conversation he's going to have with you.
As a child, it wasn't. It was just, to me, it was normal. It was my life. That's all I knew since the day I was born.
Yeah.
So it was normal. This is my dad's work. He's a soldier. I never questioned it. Sometimes he wore a uniform and sometimes he didn't. And I didn't think anything of it, But as I became a teenager on up, then I started to question things. And I remember things that I would hear in the conversations and the people that would come and go from the house.
People coming and going from the house.
Right. So other mercenaries and also bodyguards. I remember when I was in middle school, there was always a black car that was following me walking to school. Our phone was always tapped, and I was always being watched, so to make sure that I was safe. My father ended up, then there was times I realized, okay, something's going on here, because then he would call us from faraway places, I don't know where, and say, watch the news, I'm going to be on there. And he was all over syndicated news, like newspapers and on TV. But when he was, most of the time, he was silhouetted, like on 60 Minutes and things like that.
Really?
Yes, really.
What was his name?
Okay, so I can give you his name, because if someone, looks it up, I mean, he was very popular in Soldier of Fortune magazine, and he was actually... they knew him very well. There was lots of articles on him in the 70s and into the early 80s. His name was Daniel. So basically, for my middle name that I'm using as my last name, is I'm named after him, and then we just add an E to it for Danielle. So his name is Daniel Waltener, Waltener. And there's been a lot of stuff written about him. Just various books and also movies and things, but not just about him. He was just part of a team. So, yeah.
Still alive?
No, he passed away June 8th of 2024.
Okay, passed away in 2024.
Right, and so I was sworn to secrecy by him that I could never write his story about his life until after his passing. So what happened was he died. I was with him when he died. And after he died, I went on a journey. I had my own little journey going on, my spiritual journey. And I sold all my property, and my cat died, my dad died, and I was getting ready to turn 60 the following year. And I just wanted to go on a journey of self-discovery. I had so many questions in my mind from his passing, and self-reflection as well. Just all of this, was coming into play. So exactly a year ago now, I went on a trip. I left Savannah, Georgia, and I came straight to Denver, Colorado, to come see my daughter because she lives here. And in the process, this is where I found you. I had never listened to a podcast before, and I decided, what, with all this research, I'm digging into my father. Once somebody important passes away, at least for me, it makes you kind of go into a deep dive. At least for me it did, because of the things that my father did for his work. So I started heavily researching things, because you're trying to find closure, you're trying to find answers, and you're also sad because you don't want that person to leave your life yet, you know what I mean? So that's what I was doing. So I found your podcast. Actually, first I found Eric Ulyss's Facebook group, and I joined that. And then from there, that's when I learned about your podcast. And I decided to go ahead and listen to it on my entire drive from Savannah, Georgia to Denver, Colorado. And I found it fascinating, and that's where it led me to you.
So did you talk to your dad about DB Cooper?
I did here and there, and every time I did try to bring it up to him from my entire adulthood, he would just give me these glaring eyes and say, Sophie, we don't talk about this right now. And then as I got older, I would try to bring it up again, and he would just say, I can't talk about this. We can't talk about it on the phone, or we can't talk about it in person. This is something that has to wait.
Wait, for what?
That's a good question. He was very paranoid to me acting about certain things I would ask him about his career. And there were just things he just would look at me and say, we don't talk about that because somebody could be listening. And I think he was very old school. And he never gave me a yes or no answer when I asked him about it. So my curiosity stayed. And I believe he makes a really great suspect because of the information I have.
And what was it that your grandma, other than being late to Thanksgiving, thought that that it was him?
You know, I'm really not sure. I'm trying to think about the conversation. And like I said, I regret not writing it down or recording it. But it was just so random. And then it was just my sister and I and my grandmother, and we're just sitting there, and, you know, we had our kids with us, and we're just kind of all hanging out. And it was just, I was used to her being random because I'm pretty much like she was. We just randomly talk about anything here and there. And I'm trying to remember. But she was just adamant. She was just so sure that she knew. And I really don't have any more information than that. Now, my uncle at the time, her son, that was the brother of my adopted mother, I have since my father passed away, tried to reach out to them because we're not super close. But I've tried to reach out to them and ask them some questions, and they'll answer a few things, and then it goes cold turkey, and they don't want to discuss it. Like, I don't know why, but I think it's because they have information. They were all there with me that Thanksgiving of 1971. And yeah.
And the Thanksgiving was in Ohio.
It was in Ohio, in Granville, Ohio. That's where Denison University is located.
Is there any other discussion with family members about Daniel being D.B.
No,
Cooper?
I'm trying to reach out to them, and they're refusing to discuss it, which makes me even more suspicious. Because, you know, when somebody goes cold turkey and then ghosts you and doesn't want to answer some questions, that leads me to believe they know something.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, otherwise, what wouldn't they be laughing and saying, oh, I don't know anything, or what are you talking about? No, that didn't happen. It's just like, now here's something else. Let's back up a little bit. Go back to the uncle who's got some information he shared with me also back in 2013. So not only did my adopted grandmother make that comment, but also my uncle at his house when we were visiting made a comment as well. Because I think what happened is I went to him and I said, you know, why did Grandma say this? And she mentioned D.B. Cooper, and we were all laughing. But do you know anything? He goes, well, all I can tell you is when I joined the Air Force, they were asking me a lot of questions, and it was terrifying. And they were asking me about, you know, Dan Waltoner. And they knew that he was my brother-in-law at the time. And they knew that they mentioned he'd been involved in a hijacking, and they wanted to know what he knew. So I didn't think anything of it either. I just thought, oh, this is funny, you know. But again, I didn't question that much. I'm like, wow, okay, did you know anything? And he didn't really tell me anything else. He just thought it was bizarre that when he was joining the military himself, that they were already questioning him on what he might know.
That is interesting.
It is interesting, isn't it? And all along the way, I really didn't think about these things until after my father died, and I started putting the pieces of the puzzle together.
What year was your father born?
He was born October of 1941.
41, so that would make him 30 years old. He
would have been 30 years old, Thanksgiving in 1971, correct.
Okay, there are going to be people listening to this that immediately go, he's too young.
I know.
What do you have to say about that?
It hasn't been solved, has it?
No, it has not.
He's all sorts of shapes and sizes. He's ugly, he's cute, he's not, he's white, he's olive-skinned. You know, he could be military, he could be not. There's so many things that he could be or could not be. But has he ever been found? Has it ever been solved? No.
No.
So I'm not ruling out anything.
Did he join the military straight out of high school?
Yes, he did. So let me go back in my notes. So he joined, I'm going to go where I have the information about the French military. Bear with me while I find it. I've got a lot of notes for you here today and a lot of my notes for my research. So let's see. Okay, so around 1958-59, he joined the French military. It was called the French R like Robert, P like Paul, M like Michael, A like Apple. RPMA, number 8. Parachute Infantry Regiment of the Marine Troops. It's really an army regiment, but in France they call it a Marine.
Was he born in France?
Yes, he was born in Paris, France.
Okay.
I was born there too.
That's interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting. It gets more interesting as we go into the rabbit hole. So he was part of the elite colonial troops known as the porpoises, like a dolphin.
Mm-hmm.
So the colonial marine troops are one of the best regiments in France, like the Foreign Legion and the USA Navy SEALs or Special Forces. They train as commandos. So it's intense. My cousin in France was also part of this regiment, but with the tanks. So my father was involved as an elite paratrooper and trained that way, and my uncle was with the tanks. But he's also the one that helps me identify things with the French military when I need the information as I'm working on my book.
So how do you get to the United States if he's a French military?
So from the French military, the history goes, and I'll just go briefly on it. So from 1960 to 1962, he fought in Algeria with the French military colonialist paratroopers. So at that time, there was friction. They had French Africa, which was known as Algiers. And there was a lot of controversy and stuff going on. And my father was a French soldier, obviously, and he was over there fighting. And then they got upset. There was a lot of French soldiers got upset because then France decided, we're going to go ahead and give it up and give it back to Africa. We don't want to keep French, Africa, Algiers. And my father was one of those that said, oh, hell no, we've been fighting.
Because now it's all for nothing.
It's all for nothing, and this pisses me off. And so he was a hard-headed Frenchman, and he wasn't alone. There were a lot of, military French leaders also that were like, oh, hell no. So what happened was they went into, there's a French, what is it, OAS? Let me look at my notes here. So write this down. So there's a French OAS. There's an American one too, so not to get them confused. There's two separate ones. He was a French Marine paratrooper. Then he rebelled against France because he didn't want to give up French Africa, aka Algiers. So he went underground with the French OAS.
And what does OAS stand for?
Oh shoot, I forgot. You'll have to look it up. It's on there. Anyhow, so they were robbing banks and all kinds of stuff, and he claims in an interview he robbed over 200 banks. Not just him, but all of the ones that were being rebels against what was going on in the war. It was a big deal. It's a big part of history.
The organization Army Secret.
Yes.
Or Secret Army Organization.
Yeah.
I'm not going to try and do my French accent on that.
But, okay. It was Organisation Army Secret. Secret Army Organization was it stands for. And it's a far-right descendant French paramilitary organization during the Algerian War. And there's a whole bunch more you can look up on it. It's quite fascinating, actually.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look
into that. It was founded in
1961.
1961. So, yeah, it's a big deal. You'll want to look that up. There's so much more information. But it was a political upheaval. And, so Charles de Gaulle, he recognized that the conflict was too costly and began negotiations. And there were a lot of soldiers that were pissed off. Said, I don't think so. It was pretty violent. It was pretty ugly. But what war isn't?
And participated in robbing 200 banks.
Yeah, I have that actually in some articles that he was interviewed in. I have that.
That's a lot of bank robbery.
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot. And so what's really fascinating is that I was born in January of 1965. And when I was born, he was 3 days late to come see me because he was in the Congo. And so he was 24 at that time, and he was part of Commando 5 in the Congo during the Simba, like in Lion King.
Part of Commando 5?
Commando 5.
Ted Braden was in that also.
I think you're right.
That's really interesting.
It sure is, isn't it? The more I started deep diving into this, the more I was just like, I'm writing a story of my father. So, yeah. He's quite a fascinating man. And it just fascinates me, more of the stuff I'm putting together with my memories of childhood growing up with my father. And then once he passed, putting that information that I know personally, that I grew up with the information that I was researching, and just tying it all together, my mind was just blown. So, yeah.
So where's he go after 1965 when he gets back from the Congo?
Okay, so he comes to see me. I've got photos of us. I'm just a newborn baby. And so what happened was, you want to go back to that, because when he was with Commando 5 in the Congo during the Simba Rebellion, so Simba is like the Lion King. That's how you can remember it. But the Simbas were really bad. So that was so in 1964, he was in the Congo fighting them. And he was also, Commando 5 joined together with Commando 6. And Commando 6 was with Mike Hoare. You probably want to write that down. Mike, Hoare. Mad Mike was what he was known as. We can get back to that later. So when he was in the Congo during that Simba Rebellion with Commando 5 and Commando 6, there was American Army and CIA that were using Boeing planes with jumping out of the back of staircases, by the way.
727s?
Yep. You got it.
Okay, this is getting very interesting.
I know. Imagine me doing all this research after my father passed away. And what's really more interesting, you'll get a giggle out of this one. I had one person that I could talk to about this that was totally helping me do the research, and that's my father's ex-mistress.
Okay,
it gets even juicier.
And I'm guessing she's much younger than him.
She is right now 74. She's 74 now, and we're in constant contact daily.
Okay.
So I call her my cosmic mom. She found me a few years ago on Facebook. My
Really?
father was still alive, yeah. So she found me, and I was so glad that she did, and we've been really tight since. We were really close when I was younger. In fact, my father had a bookstore, and that was something that I think he created as a front, so the neighbors wouldn't question things.
Do you know the name of the bookstore?
Yeah, it was called the Old Book Haven, Haven, and that was in Newark, Ohio, right outside of Granville. So Newark, Newark. And so he hired her to work there. I also worked there as a teenager throughout high school. So, yeah. But he wasn't there a lot of the time. Yeah. So it was kind of like a little headquarters place, too. So, yeah.
All right. Post-Congo.
Okay, so now we're going to go from, what year do you want to go to now? Where we leave off? When I was born in 1965. He came from the Congo.
Yep.
And so let's see. By the way, with the Commando 5, before we leave the Congo, Bob Denard, he's French mercenary, Bob, Denard. So Bob Denard and Mike Hoare were the two commando leaders at the time. So Mike Hoare was Commando 6. No, I'm sorry. Hold on a minute. Yeah, Commando 6 was Mike Hoare's team, and Commando 5 was Bob Denard's team. So you've got an Irish guy and you got a French guy. So it's going to be pretty badass action, right? So 1964, it was called Operation Dragon Rouge, as like Moulin Rouge, rouge as in the French word for red. So Dragon Rouge. They all were there to rescue civilians encircled by rebels in what was called at the time Stanleyville, just like it sounds, Stanleyville. But now it's called Kisangani. I'm not sure if I'm even pronouncing it correct. Kisangani, which is Kisangani. It's the Belgian Congo province of Katanga. So what's really fascinating about that is the raid between the Commando 5 and Commando 6 that was sent in there to fight these Simbas is the basis of a 1978 film called The Wild Geese.
Okay, I got to watch that now.
Yeah, you got to watch it. You can find it. And that leads into more information down the rabbit hole in a minute. So just remember the wild geese. Because Mike Hoare is the one that called all his commandos wild geese. So that's where it comes from. So let's see. What do we want to go from there?
So when he gets back from Congo, it's to France.
We're in France at the time. He's not yet in the United States. That's correct. But here we'll go. By 1969, he was in the United States and he had naturalized as an American citizen. 1969.
And what was that process like for him? Do you know?
Seemed pretty easy because he was working for the CIA. He had left my mother and I in France while he came here to take care of things, and then we joined him. Then he had more training, and we ended up moving to... We were in Florida when he got his naturalization. Then we moved to Virginia, where he had more intense training for things like hostage negotiations and a lot more.
And he's traveling all the time, I assume.
Yes.
So what's he up to in between 69 and 71?
I knew you were going to ask that. I'm looking at my notes. We moved around a lot from Florida to Virginia to D.C. And then my French mother and my father were divorced. And the next day, my father and my adopted mother were married.
The day after the divorce?
The day after.
Okay, that's getting after it.
The day after. And so he was new. So this is what's really interesting. So he was newly wed and remarried on November 5th of 1971 to a young Georgia girl. And we were in Georgia, and then from Georgia we ended up being in Granville, Ohio. So keep in mind, he was newlywed November 5th of 71.
And married in Georgia, but then immediately
Actually, they were married in Alabama.
Okay. And then immediately moved to Granville, Ohio.
I think we were stationed in Alabama. I have to go back on the notes, but just bear with me on that. But then we ended up... See, I remember when I told you sometimes he was military and it was obvious, and then other times he wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
So that happened a lot. And so at that point, I remember that he was, and then he wasn't. And then the next thing I know, we're in Ohio, and I'm living with my grandmother and grandfather and my adopted mom. And then my dad leaves. And he goes off on different missions. And so he had to go to work, and he was at work and came in late from Thanksgiving. I think it was the next day. I can't verify that right now. I'm just my memory, and I was a kid.
Right.
So, and that's where I'm not getting the information from those two that are still alive. They were old enough to know what was going on. His wife and his brother-in-law. The
mistress is the only one talking.
The mistress wasn't in the photo yet. The mistress didn't come into play until about 1979. I'll have to verify that with her, and I have it probably somewhere in here in my notes. But let's just say the mistress of the bookstore didn't come into play until the late 70s and early 80s.
And what's she have to say about this D.B. Cooper thing?
She believes there's a very good chance that it is him. She wouldn't doubt it, she says. I mean, after all, when you're the mistress of a mercenary, you're going to know a lot of things. There's bed talk, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Is there an outright confession from him to anyone that you're aware of?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
He was the type of man that knew to keep his mouth shut. And that's why he survived to be almost 83 years old when he died, being a professional mercenary. I mean, when he died, I reached out and I found one of his old buddies that's a retired detective in Ohio. And when I contacted him, he goes, "My God, I'm surprised he even lived that long with what he did for a living." So, yeah, I said, I agree. It's pretty bizarre, but yeah, he was pretty badass.
Did he smoke cigarettes?
Yes, at the time. And he ended up being a cigar smoker, later. But he was smoking cigarettes and cigars. But the cigarettes at that time, yes, in 1971, also my adopted grandfather. And they both smoked, guess what kind?
Raleigh cigarettes.
Yeah, bingo.
Did he have an accent?
Yes, he did. He had a French accent. However, keep in mind, he spoke about 7 different dialects. A lot of it was African dialects. But he also spoke fluent German, French, American. He spoke different languages. He was the master of disguise. So he could hide his accent if he wanted to, if he wasn't speaking a lot. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
He was also the master of disguise. He could disguise himself with his hair color and what he was wearing, and he wore sunglasses a lot. And guess what? All I remember my father wearing are either military jump boots or loafers. You know, penny loafers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you think he ever had access to the Dan Cooper comic book?
Oh, absolutely. That's interesting you asked that because I wanted to know the same thing. So the only person that could answer that for me was my cousin. Go back to my cousin that's my age that lives in France that was also military. So I asked him about that. And he says he actually still has some of those because he remembers all the soldiers had those. So yes, Dan Cooper, the comic book, totally makes sense. Because believe me, I was questioning that as well.
Yeah, because it's always described as a Franco-Belgian comic
book. It is.
Book.
It's a French comic book. Yeah, absolutely.
U.S. soldiers would have only seen it when they were overseas.
That's correct. So keep in mind, a French retired soldier, my cousin that's alive now, verified that for me. And then also, it was also at the time of my father when he was a soldier. So there's no doubt that correlates with Dan Cooper on the ticket.
Oh, yeah.
Even though his name is really Dan, he went by Danny, which is D-A-N-Y. I've never met another man that spells Danny with one N. And it just makes a lot of sense. It all fits together in the puzzle pieces that we're trying to put together.
Yeah, and I've always been desperate for that comic book connection to be real because it's so
real. So here's your
nose.
connection. I love the smile that you're grinning ear to ear. And believe me, I went right for the source in France to my cousin, and that cleared everything up.
Did he ever do any recreational skydiving? Because obviously he was a paratrooper. But
no, he didn't need to. I mean, he was doing it for a living, so he was doing it for money. He wasn't the type of man to go do it recreational. When he did it, it was for money and for the pure joy of being a soldier. So, yeah.
Does your family remember any sort of influx of cash in late 71, 72?
That's interesting you asked that. So believe me, I've been thinking about that, and we never did without. That's why I think that my adopted mother and my uncle that were there that Thanksgiving have gone completely cold turkey when I ask them questions. Because my father was a great provider. And by the time I was 16 in high school, I was one of the only, girls in school that had a brand new Bronco to drive. I had 2 horses. I never
What year was the Bronco?
So I graduated high school in 1983. So let's go back about 3 years. So 79, 80.
Okay, so it was a full-size Bronco.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, and then he had the bookstore, and that was really interesting. So he was always paying me cash to work at the bookstore on the weekends when my friends were out, going to the lake or something. But being the Capricorn that I am, I love making money. So I learned about the business, and I never questioned anything.
Was the bookstore profitable, or do you think it was some sort of I
think a little bit of both. Yeah, he was like the Barnes & Nobles before it was Barnes & Nobles. So it was pretty cool. It was a bookstore, used books, new books, and gifts and antiques.
And do you know about how long that was open for?
Oh, yeah. I actually went and did some research when I went last summer to go visit. So when I said I left Savannah, I went to Denver. From Denver, I actually then went to Ohio. So I did a road trip, and I was kind of traveling along my father's footsteps. And then I got to Ohio, and I stayed a week with his old buddy that was a retired detective. And that gets even more interesting because the retired detective told me that he remembers my father having a handler in Granville. And remember, Granville is where we were Thanksgiving of 1971.
So what did this detective have to say about your dad?
They were really close, and he did tell me, I don't think I better mention his name because he's friends with a lot of FBI agents that are still working the FBI. But so his friend, the retired detective, remembers going with him a couple times as pretty much a backup person to go into Columbus, Ohio, just to kind of be the driver. But they both had their guns with them, and my dad went into some place, and then he remembers my dad coming out quickly and saying, "Let's go," and they were getting shot at. The car was being shot at as they were leaving. So, yeah. So, also the fact that the ex-mistress, let's go back to her, she is now married to a retired police officer from that same area, right? And he recalls my dad getting pulled over by the cops in the town there, in Granville and Newark, in between there. And he had a whole bunch of weapons in the trunk. They take him into the police department. My dad goes in there, makes a phone call, and they let him go.
Okay, I like that. I like that a lot.
And the rest of the guys are like, what the hell, but they weren't privy to any information. I mean, who gets away with being pulled over with a ton of weapons in your trunk of your car? You go into the police department, you walk into the chief's office, you make a phone call, and a few minutes later, you're like, you're free to go.
Yeah, probably not me.
Yeah, exactly. So when I was visiting the retired detective in Ohio, we were talking about stuff like that, and we were just trying to remember. He's pretty old himself, so it was hard to, how old is he? He's in his late 70s. He was just a little bit younger than my dad. But yeah, just all these little tidbits started fitting together. And that's when it made me start to question not only the professional mercenary and all the stuff he did, which we haven't even gotten into half of it yet, leads me also to wonder if he's a great suspect for DB Cooper. And my answer is yes.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
How'd you learn that they were jumping out of 727s in the Congo?
I remember him telling me about this.
Okay.
He told me, this is stuff he did talk to me about throughout my life. This is stuff he didn't mind talking about, because it was usually about when I was born, and let's talk about this and talk about that. And he was okay with certain things. But there was certain things that he would be tight-lipped about and just give me a glaring eye and saying, we're not discussing this any further. So one of those things was every time I brought up DB Cooper, hey, were you the one that jumped out of the plane? And I was joking because I didn't really know that much about it. I'm not a sleuth by any means at all. This is, a woman.
It was just your grandma talking shit.
That's my grandma talking shit, but most of the time her shit was real, so we didn't question it. But also, this is me now being a grown woman. My father died, and I want to find out everything I can and put a story together about him. So that's what led me down the D.B. Cooper vortex, was putting all this together. That little part came up and made me say, that wasn't my intention writing his story. My intention is writing about the legend that he was as a French mercenary, because it's fascinating and I want his story to go out there. But now there's a whole little piece to it that's even more inquisitive, that leaves it open, saying, wow, this kind of fits together with everything that I'm researching.
Yeah.
Where'd we leave off? What year? Where are we now?
I think we left off sort of in 71 in Granville.
So we kind of gave you a tidbit of information on who he was before 1971, Thanksgiving Eve, right? And now we're working at what happened after that. So, yeah, there was always cash flowing. I grew up as a teenager with cash always flowing. There was never, I never went without. So, yeah, we always had a nice house. I always had clothes. I always had food. I always had a car. But I didn't question it. I just, as a kid, I thought my dad was his job. You don't think about that stuff when you're a kid. You don't care. Yeah. I'm too interested in, singing in the choir in high school and looking at all the cute boys. So I really didn't care, exactly my dad's paycheck and where it was coming from. So, yeah. So after that, they got divorced, my adopted mother and my father. Oh, by the way, I did some more research and I found out he paid cash for our house after that. So There's some cash. Yeah. So soon after that, we got a house and it was paid cash. And I have all that information with all my paperwork. So believe me, I started deep diving. It's really quite fascinating. This is stuff, like I said, when you're a kid, you don't think about it. Do you know if your mom or dad paid cash for a house or not? You don't know. You don't know what a mortgage means.
Yeah.
We don't know. We don't care, you know. And then they divorced 6 years later because she was tired of him always being gone.
So 77-ish.
Yeah. But here's the thing. I have that actually, some dates here. Timeline. Here, let me go to that. All right. So they bought the house July of 74. So remember, they were newlyweds November 5th of 1971. He was late to Thanksgiving, 71. And then he bought a house cash in July of 74. She also adopted me in 74. The house then sold in 1976 because they were getting divorced. She was really tired of him always being gone. And also, at that time, from 71 until 76, actually maybe a little longer than 76, but we'll get back to that, he created the Worldwide Geese Association. The Worldwide Geese Association. He was the North American chapter for the Wild Geese Association. And it was a recruitment for mercenaries.
Boy, I sure wish I could have asked him if he knew Ted Braden.
The name is familiar to me. Like, it's even possible I've met him. There were different people that my father had in his circle that were coming and going from the house.
That would be crazy.
Yeah. And I don't even know about him. It's just the name does sound familiar, but I guess I'll have to research that myself, or you'll have to fill me in as much as possible because I'm curious. Like I said, I'm not a DB Cooper sleuth by any means. You know, I know there's all of you that and a bunch of others that are really into this, and I'm not one of those people. But now I do want to know more. So I'm slowly learning and just kind of putting the parts and pieces together to see if it fits. Because now it's part of my story. And now I'm curious. So those of you that are really into this, like yourself, can actually help me with my story as well. So we can be, a symbiotic relationship here.
How do you think your father treated women in the 1970s?
He was a ladies' man. He was a really good-looking man. And all the women loved him. He never had problems having a woman in his life. He was a lover and a fighter. I know that sounds cliche, but he was French, okay? So he was a romantic. On one end, he was this romantic, passionate man always looking for true love. And on the other hand, he was a trained killer.
Yeah, he's Billy Badass.
For money. He was a badass. He was an assassin, whatever you want to call him. But he was always working for the good side. Let's put that in there. He was against communism. He was always fighting for the good. And he was really gung-ho about USA. He was a patriot, even though he was French, and then became an American citizen. He really loved the United States of America.
Well, because obviously he was a little mad at France.
He was a lot of mad. Absolutely. And what was interesting, let's go way back. You want to go back to 1941?
Let's go.
So 1941 France, we know what's going on, World War II. And the only male figure he had in his life as a boy were the American soldiers stationed in France.
Okay.
So that's what had the greatest influence on his future, were the American soldiers. And all he wanted to be was one of those guys. So he would do little things. They treated him nicely. Hey, kid, they were really kind. They taught him English. They just, everything. They had him run errands for him and this and that. And they just kind of took him in, as their kid. And they were their father figures to him. And he just loved them because they showed him kindness. And so he looked up to them as heroes. I mean, after all, they were over there to help fight against, Hitler. So he would ask them, how do I join the American Army? And they're like, you have to join your own army first, and then you can come over to us. And that's exactly what he did.
Do you think if he's the hijacker that his bomb was real?
Absolutely not. The bomb was definitely a fake. This is just because I know my father. There's no way that, one, he'd want to blow himself up. He had a beautiful young wife. He had a daughter, me. No, he didn't want to lose that. And two, he was not about killing civilians or children or anything like that, or animals for that matter. But he was a badass, and he knew how to create something to scare the shit out of anybody at any time. So I believe that attaché case was definitely a fake bomb.
Do you know if he ever used bombs in the bank robberies?
Absolutely he did. Those were real.
What do you think is the best evidence that your father was D.B. Cooper?
That's a really loaded question, isn't it? I really don't know. I think, honestly, right now, what really has me triggered with that is the fact that my adopted mother and my uncle are tight-lipped. Boom. They're hiding. They're now hiding from me. Literally. They do not want to discuss this. Unfortunately, they're the only two people alive that actually know, that could really clear this up. So why are they tight-lipped? What are they hiding?
Yeah, it's frustrating.
You want to know something more interesting?
Always.
Which leads to this. This is another story that I'm working on. So the other story is there's a murder mystery in Albany, Georgia, Albany. Bear with me because this all kind of fits together. So the unsolved murder in Albany, Georgia, let's go to 1990, Albany, Georgia. There was a murder inside of a home in the morning on a weekday because kids were going to school, that a child's golf club was used to hit the back of an old man's head that killed him. And they don't know who killed him, but somebody in that house, I believe, did. And same with everything if you look it up online. You can look up the whole case without me even giving you a name. It's public knowledge. But anyhow, what was the reason for killing the old man? Money. Lots of money. Inheritance money. The old man was an inventor for Bell Telephone. And who is the wife? Who is the daughter-in-law of the old man? My father's ex-wife, my adopted mother.
Okay.
She loved money. She loved being part of the country club. Do you see where this is going?
Yeah, and that was your father got divorced and then remarried her the next day.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then when they divorced, she married this man that was the person they believe that did the murder, but he got away with it, her husband. And this is public knowledge. Anybody can look it up, so they can't sue me for this because it was all over the news and it's all over the internet if you look it up. Money, 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 money. Right? Isn't that what 1971 was about? Money, money, money.
Yes.
And then 1990, money, money, money. And it's the same woman. Both men protecting a woman, giving her all the money. Do you see where I'm going with this?
Yes.
Yeah.
So do you think she was an accomplice in the 71 hijacking?
Yes.
Okay. I'm very interested in that.
So am I.
And she's still alive.
Yes, she is. She's in Georgia. How do we get her to talk? I don't know. Maybe if I offer enough money.
But she was at home Thanksgiving of 71.
Yes, with me, taking care of me. And her brother was there, my uncle, and my adopted grandmother and her husband, who always wore a suit and those cute little black ties with a little pearl clip. Uh-oh. We're going deeper.
There are some rare earth minerals and some like exotic metals that are found on Cooper's tie.
Yep.
Do you think that your father would have a clip-on tie and could account for some weird stuff being on it?
Yes. Because what I think, now this is my theory, I think he borrowed the tie that was his father-in-law's because he had that exact black tie that he wore all the time. And also, because of the fact I'm just now finding out that that tie that was worn by my grandfather was in situations in his job where he was the titanium or something they're saying, titanium, absolutely was in jobs where he was managing and those particles would have been on his tie.
Where was he working, do you know?
I don't know the exact name, but hold on a second. Let me go to something here. I have that in my notes, but it's the most recent, so it's further down. Oh, wait, hold on.
Yeah, which Ohio is interesting also because several of the leading edge titanium manufacturing
Or across the river.
Was done in Ohio.
In Ohio, exactly. Yeah, so see, this is where you guys are coming in handy, the sleuths, because there's a lot of stuff I don't know. But when I start reading and checking comments and just researching myself, I'm starting to find a little bit more each time. So I'm glad you already realized that. There's 2 different things that he did. I thought when I was a kid he was working for the government, and I didn't really know what his job was because he always wore a suit and tie. Not my dad, but my grandfather, the adopted Georgia guy. So one of the jobs that he did was he organized used car dealers in Ohio. And another one is he worked for the Highway Safety Department in Ohio. So I asked, and then I was asking, I'm looking at the notes of my uncle that I actually have contact with. But then after I asked too many questions, he made himself unavailable on Messenger, which really is suspicious. I was getting a little too deep into the questions. But the last thing was, I asked him, so was it a company or was he a contractor? I always thought he had a government job. What did I know? And he answered, pretty much. 2 words, pretty much.
Okay, that's real descriptive.
Yeah, exactly. But you have to remember also that Uncle went into the military. He's keeping a tight lip. I asked more questions, and he didn't want to answer anymore. I asked a lot. So I asked him this, and this is when he made himself unavailable anymore for me on Messenger. Here's the big question. Do you remember Thanksgiving of 1971? We were all living at the 2-story brick house on the corner with the eagle above the door. And was my father late to Thanksgiving, and did he arrive by airplane to us all? How did he arrive home? Did you guys pick him up at the airport, or did he simply just show up to the house surprising us all? I was only 7, so I need help remembering details. Please and thank you. He read that, and he didn't want to answer me anymore.
All right, that's a drag.
Yes, total drag. But at the same time, it shows he knows something. I mean, why would you not want to answer that and just get real weird? And I'm trying to remember. He's so if I was 7, I think he was 13. He's old enough to remember. Okay. More so than a 7-year-old. And then my adopted mother was, I believe, 20. So I guess at one point I'm really going to try to reach out to her now and see if she'll answer any questions when I get back to Georgia. That's really, because she would know. She was his wife. She was his lover. She was the new young bride. And she likes money.
Yeah.
And, 2 husbands and 2 unsolved cases, basically, in her life. Come on. That's a little weird, isn't it?
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, exactly. What is she doing to these husbands to make them, take all these chances to bring home the bacon, so to speak?
When you joined the Facebook group, how do you think the community as a whole has treated you?
Actually, to be honest with you, I think everybody was really nice. I joined, and immediately Ryan was like one of the first people to welcome me. And then there's also, hold on, let me go to the names. I think I wrote down some names here. But everybody was really friendly. And if there's an asshole, I love the block feature. I don't have time for that. So I joined just because I was really curious to see if I could learn more about it and put it together with what I was writing. And it's come in handy. Let's see here. Cooper notes. Okay, so here it is. I was trying to find out who exactly were the experts on this. You were one. I have you on my list. So I've got Eric Eulis, that I found it was definitely an expert on this. Tom Kay. FBI Special Agent Larry. I don't have his last name.
Larry Carr.
Carr. How do you spell that?
Carr.
I'm going to add that to my notes. So I was, just reading and lurking and, also then I saw there was a host of the Cooper Vortex podcast, some guy named Darren Schaefer. And I said, wow, this guy knows a lot too. And also some Cooper case wizard known Chris Cunningham.
Yep.
Okay. So I started jotting this down. And then, of course, the Ryan Burns, that we had something similar. We're both Southerners. So Jackson, Mississippi defense attorney and former prosecutor. I'm like, God, this guy's pretty cool. And then I found out he has the blog Norjack and a YouTube channel. So I said, oh, I want to know these people. These people can maybe help me put together pieces of the puzzle for my story because they know a lot and I don't. So, yeah, that's why I joined. And everybody was very welcoming. Yeah. And then since then also, I noticed it's mostly a lot of men that are really into this, the majority that are interested. But I have since started becoming friends with Pat, who is a woman, and I'm fascinated with her being fascinated with DB Cooper. And so, yeah, it's been very welcoming.
All great people you mentioned. They've all been on this show.
Yeah.
But you did mention men versus women, and I always ask that in this show. I think it's so fascinating that
me too.
The vast majority of the true crime audience is female, and I would consider DB Cooper true crime.
Right.
And it's the vast majority of this is male. Why do you think that is?
I think because, first of all, anything that's combat related and military tends to be more, the male likes that. Females don't tend to be as interested, I don't think, in military stories and movies and whatnot. Maybe horror films and flicks, yeah. But I think when you're talking about like old westerns or anything that has to do with action, like military or jumping out of planes, I just don't think it has as much interest in the female sector as it does in the man sector, if that makes sense.
It definitely makes sense.
So, yeah, I think I'm just kind of one of those oddballs because I am interested in that. I've liked those type of movies and books because I grew up with it and I understand it.
All right, Sophie, is there anything that you wanted to get out there that I didn't ask you?
I'm not sure. I'm thinking, is there anything you want to keep asking? There is a lot more. I'm saving a lot for the book to go deeper into this, but...
when can we expect that
He did
book?
do another hijacking, by the way, after 1971.
What was the other hijacking?
Well, are you sure you're ready for this?
Hell yeah.
Okay. So, let me look at the dates. Let's go back to Mike Hoare because it happened to be his team. And I'm trying to look up the year. Let me go to my timeline. Let me get out of this with all the expert sleuths, go into the other notes. And, I think we'll end it on this because this is a good way to end it, I think, and kind of keep the mystery alive and keep a lot more information for my story that I'm writing. I actually see my story going into film. I see it becoming a movie. This one was not a planned hijacking. It just happened to be a way for them to get the hell out of an attempted coup d'etat. So look up this. I'm going to spell it for you. Seychelles. Affair. The Seychelles Affair. This is where Mike Hoare had a group of mercenaries. They were supposedly hired by the CIA to go and overthrow a government. But it was a failed attempt because in the airport, all the mercenaries were dressed as rugby players. And their weapons were hid underneath in a hidden compartment in all their bags. And on top of it were toys. I think they were supposedly rugby team bringing toys and things for some kind of event for kids. Anyhow, one of the bags, during inspection coming in the airport, there was a piece of the gun sticking out and it got noticed. And so there was a whole gunfire fight, and you'll have to look that up. It's fascinating. But they had to get the hell out of there. And so they hijacked the plane at the airport and got out.
That's pretty crazy.
It's very crazy. And that's the one that my uncle was questioned about when he was joining the Air Force.
Okay.
Okay, so that circles around to that. So it all fits together. It might sound like it's all over the place, but it actually all comes full circle. And everything kind of fits together. There's if you're making a board and you've got all the information, you're the detective and you've got all the information, and you've got the little red lines.
Yep.
It's all kind of fitting together now, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So, and then you step back and you're looking at the board and you're like, holy shit. Now what? So I can't discredit the fact that it's a good possibility that this man, who's my father, is a very good suspect for DB Cooper.
It definitely sounds like it. And you're going to be writing a story or a book about this.
Yes, I've already started my research. I have my research together. Like I said, I'm not getting on here for any attention. I'm getting on here to talk to you because I found out some information that correlates with the story and the research I was doing on my father, and it just kind of fits.
When can we expect that book? Because I need to add that to my collection.
I do not know, but you know what? I'll promise you that you can be the first person to know.
All right, get to work, Sophie.
Thank you.
If anyone has any information about this, or they know, hey, my uncle, my grandpa, I think he might have worked with your dad, or I know this story, or if they just have a question for you.
Absolutely. They can have my phone number. They can have my email. I'm all over the social media. So they can contact me at Send Sophie Messages. That's SENDSOPHIE Messages, MESSAGES @gmail.com. Send Sophie Messages @gmail.com. I'm also going to be creating my own YouTube and my own podcast. And basically, I guess the email is the best thing for right now until I go any further into creating those other accounts. Okay. And also, they can reach me through what is the name of our Facebook group where we met?
The DB Cooper Mystery Group.
Absolutely, the one created by Eric Gillis. They can contact me through there as well.
Are you going to go to CooperCon this year?
Not this year. I would like to, but right now there's too much going on. I'm in the middle of, I'm traveling all over the place, and I'm in the middle of trying to purchase a home right now. So that's keeping me busy, and some other business ventures that I'm doing because I'm a serial entrepreneur, not a serial killer, a serial entrepreneur and a real estate investor. So I'm pretty busy with all that. So yeah, they can contact me through those two means for right now, or contact you.
Absolutely.
You know how to reach me.
All right, Sophie, thank you so much for sharing this with us.
I appreciate
it. And I look forward to that book.
I do too, honestly, and I look forward to the rest of the sleuths hopefully helping me with the information I need to put the pieces of the puzzle together, and I look forward to our new friendship.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darren.
If you have questions, comments, or any information on Daniel Waltner, you can email Sophie at sendsophiemessages@gmail.com. Have you solved this case? Do you have a new fresh take on 54-year-old information? Questions, comments, hit us up. You can find us on Instagram or Twitter, or you can email us directly, dbcooperpodcast@gmail.com. Links to all that are in the show notes. Thank you to Sophie Daniele for the delicious peach cobbler. Thank you to Russell Colbert, who dreams of becoming a cobbler. Thank you to Darren Osadich for letting us play his music. I'm Darren Schaefer, and thank you for listening to the Cooper Vortex.
Here's a story we all know about a man many years ago. Hijacked a plane, so we were told. Then he jumped into the cold. Lights a bourbon and a cigarette. He's in the air, the stage is set. Polite and kind, the people say it's time to make his getaway. This is how the story goes about the money and the man. DB Cooper, they call me now. Catch me if you can. Rolled up in his coat-built tie. He's got enough to change his life. Where he landed, no one knows. But from his tale, a legend grows. Was a cold, dark, rainy night. As he walked, he saw light. Held his cash close to his side. Just needs to catch a ride. This is how the story about the money and the man. D.B. Cooper, they call me now. Catch me if you can. Went down to the bone, look for a place to use the phone. Little cafe outside of town. He walked in and he just sat down. Met a man with a cowboy hat who told a friend right where he's at. Into the night he disappeared, and from that night a legend reared. This is how the story goes about the money and the man. D.B. Cooper, they call me now. Catch me if you can. 40 years, the secret's out. The story has been told. D.B. Cooper's done running now. He was 8